talk about Trump. You predicted his win because you could see things happening in the financial markets. What did you see, and now what does a Trump world look like, in your opinion? Do these things happen faster or slower?
Well, what I saw, actually, I was using the polling data. I was looking at polling data, financial markets, betting odds, which most people don't understand. I mean, let me give you a very concrete example. So, you know, the mainstream media, they all had 90% chance of Hillary. I mean, it was an embarrassment.
Yeah,
Smart
New York
guys.
Times did.
Nate's
Shocking.
New York Times upshot. I think it was 89% Hillary.
It was 90 at one point.
Yeah, 90. Right. Nate Silver, Mr. 538. They were all way, way off. But part of the reason, one of the data points they were looking at were betting odds in places like Betfair, Ladbrokes, Paddy Power. You know, it's not legal in the U.S., but it's legal over here in the U.K., and you could get that information. And they were showing 80+% probability that Hillary was going to win. But what a lot of people missed is that there were 5 Trump bets for every one Hillary bet. But the Trump bets were like a 5er or a 10er, and the Hillary bet was probably some big shot from the city who was betting 1,000 quid, right? So the bookies have to give Hillary short odds because of the weight of money. So that's why she was getting those odds. But I'm like, well, you go in the voting booth, there is no money. This is 5 votes to 1. In other words, in betting land, the odds have to be skewed based on the weight of the money. But in the voting booth, every vote is equal. So when I see 5 Trump bets to 1 Hillary bet, she's got 90% odds, but that's because of all the money's here. But I'm looking at 5 votes to 1. Now, it wasn't 5 to 1, but things like that. There was a lot of evidence like that. Oversampling Democrats in the polls, oversampling African Americans within the Democratic sample, because that skews it more, because African Americans are 95% likely to vote Democrat. There you would miss white Democrats who might vote for Trump. There was just lots of evidence kind of lying all over the place. But you need to kind of have ice water in your veins. You can't be a partisan. And so many people hated Trump, his demeanor, his vulgarity, his unfitness for office, as they claimed. They couldn't look at the data objectively. They were too spun up emotionally.
Yeah, it was really emotional. And actually, I was reading the New York Times. Now, I'm removed over here. And I like the New York Times as a paper, but I read it, and it was so biased against Trump. It was just almost slander, some of the headlines. And then Hillary was just getting this free pass. And I was like, man, they're not even coming across as objective journalists. And I guess it's because it became emotional for people, right?
Correct. Well, it's a good point, Brian. I've spent a lot of the time immediately before and in the weeks since the election abroad. So I've been in Australia, Ireland, here in the UK. I was in Paris a couple of days ago. And you run into, foreigners, non-Americans, and they go, well, how does it feel to have a monster for a president? They're just horrified and shocked. And I thought about that, and I realized that in the United States, so you're absolutely right, Washington Post, New York Times, CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, they all had him as a monster and unfit and all that. But we have other voices. In the US, you could listen to Rush Limbaugh, Laura Ingraham, Fox News, Sean Hannity, et cetera. So you could get both sides in the US. Now, if you favored one or the other, you probably filtered that out, but you could hear the other voices. But abroad, you don't get Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham. You don't hear those voices in the UK and Australia. You do get CNN, CNBC, and NBC, et cetera. So I was just trying to imagine what it would be like to be someone abroad getting 100% of my information from the anti-Trump, biased media and having no other voices. No wonder non-Americans think he's a monster. He's not. I mean, a little vulgar, flashy. You can criticize him, but
sounds like a Wall Street trader.
He's not. Yeah, he's not Mussolini. He's not Hitler. And I think the CEO experience will serve him well. Now, as far as his policies are concerned, and this is interesting because so many people couldn't get past the personality that they never looked at the policies. Now that he's our president-elect, they are looking at the policies. Well, guess what? Low taxes, less regulation, big spender. What's not to like, right? So this is he wants to do $1 trillion of infrastructure spending. So John Deere and Caterpillar go up because you need heavy equipment. He wants to do defense spending. So Lockheed and Boeing and Raytheon, all these companies go up because of the defense spending. He wants to get rid of regulation. So banks are up because he's going to repeal Dodd-Frank. Pharmaceuticals are up because he's going to repeal Obamacare. Consumer non-durables are up because he's going to cut taxes and consumers will have more discretionary income. So everything's up. It's like happy days are here again. I mean, there's euphoria in the stock market because hey, this is great. There's a problem here, which is the numbers actually don't add up. And this is the Reagan playbook. This is Ronald Reagan, 1981. What did Reagan stand for? Lower taxes, less regulation, and Reagan was a big spender. He was not a fiscal conservative. Yeah. So So you have the Reagan playbook, and actually you have a lot of the same advisors. Who's in Trump's inner circle? Well, you got voices like Steve Moore, Larry Kudlow, Art Laffer, Judy Shelton. These were all veterans of the Reagan Revolution. And so, David Malpass is the other one. He's one of the big ones. So they were all in the Reagan administration at various stages. So you got the Reagan team, the Reagan playbook, Happy Days Are Here Again, but there's several big differences. When Reagan came in 1981, January 1981, he was sworn in, interest rates were 20%. They had nowhere to go but down. Trump comes in, interest rates are close to zero. They have nowhere to go but up. The other thing is that the debt to GDP ratio when Reagan was sworn in was 35%. He took it to 55%, which you go from 35 to 55, that's a 60% increase in the debt to GDP ratio. But Reagan had the fiscal headroom. Reagan could do it because that was available. Trump's coming in, okay, interest rates are zero, so they probably have nowhere to go but up. And the debt to GDP ratio is 104%. Trump doesn't have the fiscal space. He can't cut taxes and put $1 trillion of spending on top of $20 trillion of debt. That'll push the debt to GDP over 110%. We'll look at Greece at some point. We'll have a sovereign debt crisis in the United States. So my point is, Trump's got the Reagan advisors, he's running the Reagan playbook, but he has very different initial conditions. Reagan had tailwinds, Trump has headwinds. And I think when the market sees that the spending is not going to materialize, that they're not going to be able to do it, that the Fed is raising interest rates, we're going to get a very different result.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, learn from the best minds in the world, and connect with a community of passionate people building the best versions of themselves. Just click on the link below, and I'll see you on the inside.